Let's try and get some sense about what we mean by databases. Okay, so one of the resources in this week's Moodle is this page here. Okay, what are databases? So I think I'm missing a bit there. Anyway, you can see it in the web page there. Okay. No, it doesn't want me to do that. Right. Okay. Stop playing around. Get back to what we're talking about. Okay. So what is a database? It's a way to store data, I suppose. Okay. And that raises more questions. What way are you going to store data? Data is not just sort of random stuff, all higgledy-piggledy. Normally what we try and do is we try and structure the data. Okay, and we structure it in a way because we might want to change the data. Okay, and typically that data is held in a computer, and it should be easily accessed and easily retrieved. So let's look at some of these words in a bit more detail. Okay, so you can just mouse over the words with the red background and you get a bit more information here. Okay, so first of all, a structured set of data. Okay, it's structured in what way? Typically, structure involves repetition. Okay, and typically what we do is, for example, uh, a, you might have a database to store all the student records, DKIT. Okay, if you start thinking about that, each student's first name, last name, email address, what course they're doing, what year they're on, what subjects they're taking, how they've gotten on in subjects in the past with the results and so on. What about their timetable? Who's lecturing them? What sort of class is it? Is it I know you guys just have the 1 3 hour session, but you could have a 1 hour lecture and an hour's tutorial and a 2 hour lab class. So all of these things have to be managed together. If I am taking you at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday evening, I can't be teaching somebody else at this. I can't be teaching another group of students a different subject at the same time in the same room. Okay, so all that information will be kept in a database, and if we can impose some sort of structure when we design the database, it's going to be a lot easier to retrieve and change information. Okay, so typically, say in the student records, we would store information about students in one place. For example, where a student lives is not going to be connected at all to say where a lecturer lives or what a lecturer's phone number is or the name of a room. Okay, but if a lecturer is taking the certain programming, the names of the students taking the certain programming is going to be somehow has to be connected to the lecturer who's teaching that module, whereas a business studies lecturer will not have any connection with your names because they're not teaching you. Okay, so typically what we're interested in database is the first thing we want to figure out what's the scope of all the data we want. Okay, and the first question we really ask is just a very basic question in English: what are the things of interest? Okay, in our database. So, for example, things of interest in DKIT database would be somewhere to store information on all the lectures, somewhere to store information on all the students, somewhere to store information on all the subjects, somewhere to store the information on all the courses, somewhere to store the information on all the lecture rooms, and somewhere to store the information on the types of class. Is it a tutorial? Is it a lab? Is it a lecture? Okay, so all these things of interest, what we do is we store them in what are called, oops, sorry, I can't get to it. Okay, you can see it there, database table. Okay, so typically there is a database table for each thing of interest. Okay, and then we have individual records in there. Okay, so for example, you could have a database table on students, and then we have information or properties about each student. Okay, student's first name, student's last name, student's phone number, student's next of kin, student's townland address, student town address, student air code, and so on. Okay, so these are properties then of students. Okay, so we have a database. It's got things of interest. Each thing of interest is in a table. Okay, and each record, each thing then is going to have certain properties. Okay, that's the best way to think about it. And then each time we have a particular student, there's going to be a record for them. Okay, so this is just like a row in a database, or sorry, in a spreadsheet table. Okay, and then the properties, another more formal way to use to describe them is what are called fields. Okay, and these are like the vertical columns in a spreadsheet. Okay, you know the way typically the very first row will have the names. For example, row 1 might have student first name, column 2 student surname, row 3 or column 3 student email address, and so on. Okay, and then the second row in the spreadsheet will have the first student, third row will have the second student details, and so on. Okay, so these 4 words very, very important. Okay, in the example there we have a database table, which, and the thing of interest here is just humans, I suppose, people. Okay, so we've got a database table and the thing of interest is people. Okay, we've got 4 records in that table: John, Millicent, Mary and Michael. And then we've got 4 properties, okay, name, address, email and mobile number. Another word for properties is attributes. Okay, and from database point of view, each attribute or property translates then into a field. Okay, so we've got 4 fields there, 4 columns: name, address, email and mobile number. Okay, and we've got 4 records, okay, or 4 instances of the thing of interest, in this case humans, whether they be employee or whatever. Okay, so these words, I'll be using them over these videos. You need to just kind of clear them in your head. Database, the big picture, okay, the big overall thing, and then when you break it down, you try and structure it a little bit for our data. We find there are things of interest, okay, and we try and create a table for each of them. Okay, and then each time we get an actual instance of a thing of interest, for example, you know, student, and then another student, and another student. Okay, these are instances of the thing of interest, and these are called records. Okay, and then each thing of interest is going to have properties that we can capture data on. Okay, and we need to create fields for these. Okay, so when we're working with databases, now with MySQL 0 whatever, you're not allowed to create databases, but we can certainly create loads of tables. Okay, so when it comes to actually using working with databases, you'll be creating tables, okay, and each table is going to have a certain number of fields, and then we can insert records into these tables. Okay, now it turns out that we need to connect all these tables together, otherwise we have individual tables not connected together. That's not really a database. So for example, at Wednesday 6 o'clock, okay, in P1160, I, Philip McGuinness, am teaching the certain programming class, a semester 2 module called Dynamic Web Development. Okay, and the members of that class are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so all that information has to be related to each other. Okay, so you can see that there is a difference in those things of interest, but we need to relate them together. Okay, you can't, whoever is scheduling the timetable cannot schedule somebody who is not a member of the teaching staff to teach that class. Okay, and similarly, if a student is not registered in that class to do that module, do that course, they won't be able to attend that class. Okay, so that's how we structure the data. Okay, database, table, records and fields. Okay, how do we change this data? We're talking a lot about records. Okay, we might add a new record. A new student joins the class late. Okay, a student might decide, I need to change my password. Okay, so you want to update your already existing record. Okay, so update means the record is in there already. You can't update your password unless you already have one, unless you already are a record in the student table. Okay, and then finally, records can be deleted as well. Okay, somebody leaves the class, the updated class list won't have that person. If somebody deregisters. Okay, and then data. I suppose ultimately you can think of data as being just like ones and zeros, computing, but we have different types of data. Okay, and we've seen this to some extent already in our forms, because we know we can have ordinary text boxes, we can have number text boxes, and so on. Okay, so and you know from your programming that we can talk about int, decimal, float, boolean, char, and so on. Okay, now in databases, I suppose the one that jumps out that's a bit different is going to be varchar. Okay, variable character. For example, people's names. You might think, well, okay, I'm going to leave 100 characters for the first name, because we know some people have really long first names and really long surnames. The problem with that is you might just be called Jim Lee. Okay, you're not taking up very much space in terms of storage in the database. Okay, so what a varchar means is that in theory there could be 100 places, 100 characters for your name. In practice, because you're only taking up 3, the other 97 will collapse. So it means we don't have a huge amount of empty space in the database. Okay, date, okay, hopefully that makes sense, int, decimal, so on. So we'll explore these. I know you know what a lot of these mean already. Okay, so we store all this data in a computer. We're going to use the Apache web server. Don't mind that there about XAMPP software bundle. Okay, we're going to use the MySQL 0x. It's also an Apache web server. And some of these terms, SQL, MySQL, SQL is a language, okay, structured query language. MySQL is a tool for working with SQL. Okay, so we can set up database tables just by clicking buttons and doing a wee bit of typing, or we could actually write SQL to do it. Okay, so a tool can be very quick in order to do this. Okay, so we're going to use a particular MySQL tool called phpMyAdmin. So I'll show it to you in a video coming up soon. Okay, so don't worry about the XAMPP software bundle. And then more formally, SQL is also known as a data definition language or a data description language. Okay, so just try and don't even try and distinguish between SQL and MySQL until we've actually used the this phpMyAdmin interface. So just you can refer back to it there. Okay, and then we can access the data. Okay, so I've already talked about insert, update, and delete. We can also select, which allows us to read the records. Okay, sometimes this is all called CRUD. The old database systems used to have create, read, update, and delete. These are the 4 major commands, but SQL uses select, insert, update, and delete. Okay, so insert, update, and delete, and then we've got select. Okay, if you want to read the records, all records, some record, or one record. And one record is going to be really important, for example, when someone logs in, because they should have a unique username and password. So when you try and log in, only one record should be found for you. Okay, don't worry about last semester's introduction to MySQL. It should be there. Okay, and finally, information. Information is what we try and put a bit of intelligence on the data. Okay, so we try and maybe come up with reports, make graphs using processing the raw data. Okay,